Doris, welcome to the story. Remember Oregon's last election for governor? A huge amount of money was spent, $70 million, trying to convince you which candidate to vote for. We're one of the last states in the country with no limits on campaign finance and the amount of money that can be given to campaigns and who the campaigns can get it from. Well, heads up, that is on the verge of changing, and that's our big story tonight. Now, you might not think campaign finance is an exciting topic, but you should, because it pays for all those ads and mailers you get every election cycle, and it seems like it blows through the area every once in a while. And up until now, it's been wide open in Oregon with no limits. So the rich folks and the big unions can really throw their weight around. There's a lot of money being spent because, well, it works, and everyone's trying to convince you which way to vote. And while lots of lawmakers have given lip service to reform over the years, very little has actually happened. Voters did pass two different initiatives, but both were then struck down by the courts. So the Oregon legislature, get this, has not taken action on this in 150 years, until right now. This morning, the Oregon House Rules Committee hammered out a compromise between several groups, and this afternoon the bill passed on the full House floor. One of the biggest things it will do is stop folks like Nike founder Phil Knight from writing huge checks directly to the candidates he supports. In 2022, he gave Betsy Johnson $3.75 million and Christine Drazen $1.5 million. Under the new bill, he would be limited, like every other individual in Oregon, to just $3,300. It would also prohibit unions from spending huge amounts. During the last governor's race, the union, SEIU, gave Tina Kotek $1.7 million. Under this new bill, they would be limited to roughly $100,000. First, we're going to hear some reaction from the players involved. Then we'll get more into the details on what this bill does. Here's Jason Kafoury. He's an attorney in Portland and one of the leaders of a group called Honest Elections Oregon. He was talking online this morning with lawmakers.
I'm pleased that we're finally getting to a place where good government groups could find it, I would say, acceptable enough as a starting point and a big starting point. I mean, this is a huge step forward for our state. We've been the Wild West for way too long, no limits on any political contributions. And I don't think that's the Oregon way. I really don't. We ranked in 2016 second to last in how we finance our campaigns by the Center for Public Integrity. Only Mississippi was low. We were 49th of 50th, and I think we'll finally move out of that category after this.
So, sorry, Mississippi. You're going to have to find another state buddy to hang out with at the bottom of the rankings. The politicians from both parties praised this deal and agreed it is about time.
So first, I want to thank everyone who has come to the table and participated in good faith to come to this compromise. As I've said before in this committee, we have seen too many years of entrenched positions and conflict around campaign finance reform. But in the last few weeks, we've seen remarkable willingness for all sides to engage, listen, and focus on the good policy for the people of Oregon.
And those opinions were heard, those opinions were meshed through, and those opinions ended up on a piece of paper that people agreed to. And I think moving forward, we show Oregonians that the legislative body can work and get good policy out there. It's not perfect. We understand nothing ever is perfect, but we have the ability to get people to come to the table and have a conversation to move issues forward.
Okay, so there you go, a historic agreement. Now, what's it say? Let's take a look. For a candidate for state representative or state senate or circuit judge or district attorney, they will only be able to accept $3,300 per election from a person, $2,000 per election from a candidate committee, and $5,000 per election from a multi-candidate political committee. But there's more. They can accept $15,000 per election from a legislative caucus committee, $13,200 per election from a member organization. For that, we mean groups like Planned Parenthood or environmental groups. $5 times the number of donors per election from a small donor political committee. I know that's confusing, but we're talking about unions there, and that's for a local race. For a statewide race, like for governor or attorney general, that small donor political committee can give $10 times the number of donors per election. So, for example, if SEIU has 55,000 members, they may have something like 10,000 members who contribute to the political campaign, and that 10,000 times $10 gets you $100,000 for a statewide race. So that's still a decent amount of money, and the union could give that amount to several different candidates. But, it's nothing like $1.7 million, which is what it gave to Tina Kotek last time around. Now, you might be wondering, wait a minute, aren't there loopholes? Well, yes, there are, in part because campaign finance also includes federal law. And since independent expenditures are allowed under federal law, they have to be allowed in Oregon, too. But there is a twist. This new law requires any group that spends $50,000 or more in an election cycle to reveal the name of everyone who gave them $5,000 or more. So big groups can still spend independently big money for a candidate or an issue, but they'll have to tell you who's supporting them. There is a lot more to the bill. For example, it also lets cities like Portland set even lower campaign limits. This entire bill runs 27 pages, but those are the highlights. It sailed through the House today with 52 yes votes and 5 no votes on its final reading. And now it's on to the Senate, where it's expected to quickly pass. It needs to. There are just 4 days left in this legislative session. Then it's up to Governor Kotek. If it's signed into law, it will not take effect until January of 2027. And now it's your turn. What do you think about limiting the amount of money that can be spent in political races? You know what to do. Communicate with us. Shoot us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. And while we're talking about the Oregon legislature today, House Bill 4002, that's the compromise bill to recriminalize drugs, well, that landed on Governor Tina Kotek's desk today. She now has 30 days to decide whether she'll sign it or not. The clock started today. In my opinion, she's absolutely going to sign it. House Speaker Dan Rayfield signed the bill yesterday, and Senate President Rob Wagner did the same today. That allowed it to move on to the governor. We'll let you know once she makes a decision. Let's turn to the state of Washington now, which has the third highest gas prices in the country, on average only behind California and Hawaii. On Tuesday, a former state economist filed a lawsuit against the governor's office for allegedly forcing him out of his job. Why? Well, he says he refused to lie about skyrocketing gas prices. Last year, the economist predicted new state policies would jack up prices by as much as 50 cents a gallon. And he claims state leaders wanted him to keep that quiet. Susanna Frame from our sister station in Seattle has the story.
It grinds you down. It exhausts you.
On a Zoom interview, former state economist Scott Smith says gas prices and a life-altering controversy about them led to losing his job and sinking into serious bouts of anxiety.
Your mind races. Oh, my Lord. It kind of robs you of joy.
Is it even difficult to do this interview?
Yeah. Oh, this has not been a good day.
Today, Smith filed a lawsuit accusing the Department of Transportation and the governor's office of retaliating against him for refusing to hide from the public his mathematical prediction that a new state policy would send gas prices up by 40 to 50 cents a gallon. He says his WashDOT supervisor, under pressure from the governor's budget office, asked him more than once to leave those numbers out of a report.
I told him I wouldn't jimmy the numbers.
At issue is the Cap and Trade Program. It's an Inslee-backed policy to make the state's biggest polluters pay for their carbon emissions. So far, it's brought in more than $2 billion for programs to fight climate change.
Look at the profits they have made on our backs in the last couple of years.
At the time, the governor was blaming others, like the greed of big oil, for gas price increases. Smith says he was pressured to change his estimates of fuel costs to fit that political narrative. But he refused.
In my entire career, I haven't had anyone actually explicitly ask me to change a number in my entire career. And I've been doing this since 1987.
According to the lawsuit, the retaliation was hostile and ranged from being denied basic software all the way up to having his job eliminated through new legislation.
Before he was House Bill 1838.
Last year, the legislature passed a bill that moved his duties to another agency. At this hearing, the only agency testifying in support of that was the governor's budget office.
We believe that it will provide greater visibility into the forecast.
Do you really believe that they pushed legislation through specifically to get rid of him?
I do. I think it was a political hit job. I think they wanted to send a message to him. They wanted to send a message to other state employees that you either play ball with the governor's office or we will take it out on you. We'll get rid of your job.
In December, the governor's office said their budget analysts had no recollection of the events outlined by Scott Smith and that the change to his position was made by lawmakers.
I'm a working guy. You know, I'm just a guy who's trying to do his job. You know, and that's not what I was allowed to do. I got crushed.
That's Susanna Frame reporting there. In a statement, a WashDOT spokesperson said they're taking the whistleblower allegation very seriously. The state has 20 days to respond to the lawsuit. We'll keep you posted on that. Coming up next on the story, the city of Portland only sobering center closed several years ago, and calls for another one have grown in recent years, with nothing actually happening though. But now, initial plans for such a facility in the Rose City have been released, and our Blair Best breaks down when it could be up and running, where it could go, and how much it would cost. That's all coming up when the story returns. Over the past 4 years, ever since the last one closed, there have been talks about the need for a sobering center in Portland, somewhere that first responders can drop off people in drug-fueled crisis. And now, initial plans for such a place have been released. It's far from a done deal, but the farthest into this process that we've been since the pandemic started. Blair Best has the story.
Beyond the tents, RVs, and trash is pain.
I've been a heroin addict for almost 50 years, or fentanyl now.
Cam gets his drugs under this Central East Side overpass.
It's dangerous. It's really, really, really powerful stuff.
We were here 2 weeks ago.
Going downhill is it's not good.
When this man was withdrawing from fentanyl.
My stomach is stabbing and my feet won't stop moving. I just want to yawn out and scream every about 30 seconds.
A lot of people say that the kick isn't that bad from fentanyl. I think it's 10 times worse than heroin.
In September of last year, Multnomah County commissioners voted to put $150,000 toward planning and designing a 24/7 drop-off sobering center for people like the ones at this camp. Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards is leading the project. She released initial plans this week and is waiting to talk with KGW until they're approved.
It's kind of like the drunk tank.
Well, not exactly. It would be about 35 beds where first responders can take people in crisis, regardless of if they are willing to go or not, freeing up jails and emergency rooms.
I mean, how long do they keep you in there?
The plan is for 1 or 2 days, with the option of a third if the person is willing. But that's not long enough for people on fentanyl, Cam says.
The mistaken assumption that 5 days you're clean, and that's not true. You know, you don't kick in 5 days.
The sobering center staff would connect people with further treatment if available. The center would potentially open in about 1 to 2 years. A timeline Portlanders like Nolan Nez argue doesn't match the need.
And our leadership continues to talk about how they have all these plans, 30-day plan, 90-day plan, a two-year wait on a sobering center. None of that is impacting anything that is happening on our streets right now. We don't have 2 years. These streets don't have 2 years. This is a clear and present issue on our streets right now.
All right, so this 2-year timeline is one that the county is calling aggressive, even though it could take much longer. But they're hoping to get things going as soon as next month, and it is expected to cost roughly $14 million each year to run it. Pat?
Wow, spendy. Okay, Blair. And where you are right now, that's where this sobering center would be, is that right?
Well, the county has a list of potential locations of where the sobering center could be, and we're told that this large white building here off Northwest 17th and Thurman is on that list. And take a look. Actually, last year we got to go inside the building. It's owned by a private developer, and it was supposed to be office space, but the owner couldn't find anyone to rent it given the current state of downtown. So instead, they decided to turn it into a mental health crisis center. It is centrally located for first responders, and it's near a hospital, criteria that the county is looking for when choosing a location here.
All right, Blair, and this plan also seems to point out what the county cannot do, right?
Right, that's true. And that includes residential treatment and services for people with severe mental illness, both critical pieces to a successful recovery system. But the county is essentially saying they don't have the capacity under this sobering center plan to address those pieces. And Julia Brim Edwards and her team is also calling out the county here, saying that compared to other cities across the country, they're not allocating enough money for sobering centers like this.
All right, and the county has already had a sobering center, but it closed 4 years ago. It was run by Central City Concern, so this is something the city has needed for some time now, right?
Right, and it feels like a little bit like deja vu here because 2 years ago, a city and county program, and I'm going to get it right for you here, the Behavioral Health Emergency Coordination Network, it's a mouthful, they essentially said the exact same thing that Julia Brim Edwards is saying now, and that's that someone needs to just set up a one-stop shop for people to go and get clean in downtown Portland. But 2 years ago, there were no takers and nothing really came of it, so we'll see if things change this time around.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right, thanks so much, Blair. Appreciate it. Up next now in the story, Portland City Council is considering a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. From the sound they make to the emissions they give off, many Portlanders spoke in favor of such a ban. But one group that you may not expect came out against the measure today. We've got all the details when the story returns. The KGW Great Food Drive is going on right now. Safeway stores have an easy way to give. You can make the donation at the checkout pin pad. We want to collect enough donations to provide over 1 million meals to local families. So far, we've raised enough for 150,000 meals, so we're getting going. And the Oregon Food Bank is going to distribute to 21 regional food banks and more than 1,000 partners in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Plus, all this week, Rivermark Credit Union will match the first $5,000 donated. We also want to thank local Toyota dealers, Pacific Office Automation, and Safeway for helping us make this year's drive such a huge success. There's a growing opposition to leaf blowers because of the noise and the impact on the health and environment. That's better, thank you. But in about 2 years, things could change. Today, Portland City Council started considering a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. If passed, the ban would go into effect in January of 2026. It would start as a seasonal ban. You wouldn't be allowed to use gas-powered leaf blowers from January to September. You'd only be allowed to use electric leaf blowers during that time. Of course, you could use an old-fashioned rake or a broom. You could still use gas-powered blowers in the winter, though. The work group that developed the policy says that's because right now electric leaf blowers can't handle the wet, heavy leaves that we have in the wintertime here in Portland. But starting in 2028, gas-powered leaf blowers would be banned completely. The work group says they believe electric leaf blower technology would improve by 2028 to be able to handle wet leaves. But it's worth noting that there would be exceptions for inclement weather. Violations would apply to property owners, not contractors. So pay attention to that. If someone is using a gas-powered leaf blower on your property, you would be liable. You'd get a warning first and then a fine starting at $250 and going up all the way to $1,000. Studies have shown the gas-powered leaf blowers contribute a huge amount of pollution. A study by California's Air Resources Board estimated that a commercial operating using one backpack leaf blower for 1 hour generates the same emissions as a car driving 1,100 miles. Leaf blowers also disrupt ecosystems. They don't just blow leaves, but dirt and dust, and pollen and mold and bugs, oh my, including pollinator larvae and other particular matter. That pollution and the noise pose hazards to the health of people using the leaf blowers and those walking by. Electric leaf blowers are still noisy, but they are quieter than gas-powered ones, and they don't have any emissions. Today at City Council, an overwhelming number of people testified in favor of the ban on the gas-powered leaf blowers.
I can say without a doubt there isn't a single hour of any day, any time of year that there isn't the sound of gas-powered leaf blowers. Today, as I'm out hearing them on every block, this is 7 days a week, 365 days a year on holidays.
Portland limits the idling of commercial vehicles to 5 minutes. If this law is on your books, you must consider why you will continue to legally allow a machine with emissions exponentially worse, emissions that would fail an inspection at the DMV, to blow for continuous hours across your neighborhoods, parking lots, parks, and school grounds. The gas leaf blower is cars without seatbelts, DDT, asbestos, lead in paint, and indoor smoking.
The big opposition to the ban in Portland, owners of golf courses. They say that leaf blowers are a huge part of maintaining their landscapes, and switching from gas to electric would be a burden for them.
Early adoption of battery-powered equipment may be practical for a homeowner on a quarter-acre lot. But for an average golf course covering over 150 acres, the needs are quite different. The drawbacks and deficiencies, particularly in a commercial operation, include limited battery life, runtime, insufficient power, limited charging infrastructure, the event of regional power grid reliability, recycling limitations, and the overall cost of new equipment, batteries, and charging stations.
However, more than 100 cities across the country have already banned gas-powered leaf blowers, including Lake Oswego. And the entire state of California banned the sale of new gas-powered small engines like the ones in leaf blowers and lawn mowers. Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson says she supports that ban, and the county is working on its own ban by 2025. 3 bills that would impose statewide restrictions have failed in recent years. We'll keep an eye on the Portland proposal, though, and let you know what happens. In the meantime, what do you think? Are you sick of hearing leaf blowers all day, or would you rather they stick around? Let us know, will you? Send an email to thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. It just goes on and on. A quick programming note, we're not going to have a show for you tomorrow night because of President Biden's State of the Union address, and you should be watching that. In the meantime, the good stuff is coming your way next, and we'll see you right back here on Friday at 6:30.